We'll go next to Renee in Sacramento, California, first-time caller. Hi, Renee. You're on with David Wilcock on Coast to Coast.
Hi, good morning, you guys.
Hi there.
Hi, great to be on and talk with you guys. I don't know if you realize this, David or George, but David, you're on my time on Pacific Coast, and you actually came on the show at 11:11.
There you go.
A lot of people
we timed it that way.
Very good.
I thought it was pretty cool. I've been doing a lot of meditating and finding that levitation that you were talking about earlier comes up a lot for me, and there was one particular one I wanted to ask you a question about, not so much about levitation, but I just wanted to add that.
Okay.
While I was in meditation, I was doing. I started just naturally doing remote viewing, what's called remote viewing, and while I was in meditation at one point, I was in a dimension. I jumped to a dimension instead of just remote viewing, and the spirit actually came to me and wanted to know what I was doing there. You're not supposed to be here. So I just wanted to get your viewpoint on that.
Well, I'm not exactly sure if there's a question in there per se. What was the? I mean, it's a very interesting situation, but what is there a question in there?
I guess it's not so much a question, that I just wanted to get your opinion.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah, there are places that are guarded. There are places esoterically that are not safe to go. And that is a fact. You can go out of body, you can have remote viewing experiences, but there are some places that are not safe. And so part of the reason why this would be, and it's explained in these series of books that I am really into, The Law of One, which came out in the early 1980s. It was allegedly channeled, and normally I don't espouse a whole lot of credibility to channeling, but this material is sort of like the underpinning of everything I do scientifically and philosophically, and I found many, many correlations in it that I could then tie into science. Now, one of the most interesting parts of the Law of One that I don't usually talk about is that while Carla the Channel was doing her work, the source warned her that if she were lured into these service-to-self behaviors by negative beings, that she could actually go into this place called negative time-space. And negative time-space is kind of like getting stuck in the movie Hellraiser. And you actually get stuck into it enough that you have to reincarnate in it and have entire lifetimes on a prison planet.
Hi, this is Renee Martine, and I wanted to make a little side note to the inquiry I had for David Wilcox last night on Coast to Coast in regards to the what I'm calling a dimensional jump that I experienced. I'm not really sure what else to call it, but a dimensional jump. Anyway, I one day was doing a remote viewing for an investigation that some friends of mine were going on, and they had asked me to do a remote viewing for the location prior to their investigation. And while I was doing remote viewing, I somehow ended up in a blackness, just like David described, and it was just empty space. And the only thing I noticed was that there was two very tall Native American men in heavy garb, like warrior type Native Americans, and they were very, very tall. And they walked right to me, and they each one took a stand by each side of me, and kind of stood there like pillars, like guards. And when David had explained to me that it was possible that they were guardians, it really made so much sense, and I'm really glad that I called in, because the sense of what I was feeling was I thought that they were angry with me because I was in this dimension and I wasn't supposed to be there. Their exact words were, "Why are you here? What are you doing here?" And they told me, you're not supposed to be here. So after talking with David, and the way he explained to me his insight really made a lot of sense, because I could have easily went into a dimensional world or dimension that would have not been for my highest good. not even in taking in consideration the dangers of doing remote viewings blindly, like the way I did for this paranormal group. Not to say that it's their fault; it's my fault for not really understanding the levels of severity that come along with such a responsibility. So I decided to make the side note just because of the nature of it, and if anyone else had maybe ever experienced what I experienced. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was not just the validity of David's response, but the fact that I did not want to make the call. I was able to listen into Coast to Coast Live, which normally I don't get to do. And for this particular show, I was excited because I enjoy David's insight and David's work, and always listen to Coast on a lot of their shows. So I was listening on with some friends, and some of the friends wanted to call in to ask questions to David, and I wasn't really that interested, to be honest, to call in and talk with David. But something just kept telling me, and I'm going to say my higher self was really just kind of poking me at me and telling me to call. And the more I tried to resist calling, the more nervous I got. And because I knew that if I picked up the phone and started dialing the numbers, I was going to be on the phone with David and George and the rest of the world that was listening. And I really didn't have a question per se to ask. And I just remembered my hands being sweaty, and I was so nervous to dial the number because I knew they were going to pick up. And sure enough, I was the second caller. So I don't know, I guess you could call that divine intervention, but I, during the time I was waiting to get online, I almost hung up. And I kept asking myself, well, what am I supposed to ask these guys? And, without sounding like a total goofball and just calling and wasting their, precious airtime and that of other people who may want to call in and ask questions, some valid questions. So that is the thing that came to mind and came out of my mouth, was this particular situation that I had. And I was really glad that I was being poked along to make this call, because it made a lot of sense to me. And just recently, today, as a matter of fact, this morning, I woke up and I resigned from working in the paranormal field just so that I can do more research and have a better clearing understanding of remote viewing and the channeling work that I was inadvertently doing, and how easy it was for me to make this jump. I wanted to get more insight and educated on that so that I'm not doing it blindly. And again, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make this side note and explain the circumstances of my inquiry that I had for David. And finally, the last thing was really interesting, and makes this whole thing really interesting to me, is that right at 11:11, David came on air, and I looked at the clock and I thought, wow, I wonder if they did that on purpose, that it was 11:11 when David said his hellos. And what was even more interesting was the fact that when I said my hello on air with David and George, the time was 1:11. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say, and I hope that everybody out there doing this type of work is cautious and educated, and that's it. Thank you very much.